Data showing Philippine headline inflation eases further to 1.4%. National statistician Dennis Mapa announced the Consumer Price Index, or CPI, fell to 1.4% in April, coming all the way from 1.8% in March, led by the slower annual increment in the index of food and non-alcoholic beverages. So the figure settled within the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas forecast range of 1.3 to 2.1%. The April print is also lower than the 1.8% median estimate from a Business World poll of economists. You can see here it is also the lowest since inflation came through in November 2019 of 1.2%. Now for more is June Neri, the lead economist, chief economist at BPI. So good to see you, June. Welcome back to the show.
Great to see you too, Cathy. Happy to join your show.
Right. So you gunned for 1.6%. I was trying to look for your picture here. I know you're at the lower end of the forecast still. Didn't get it quite right, but you were at the lower end of the forecast. What do you make of the result of 1.4% for April?
Yeah, better than expected is great for the consumer, Cathy. Aside from election spending, improving their capacity to spend, lower inflation restores some of the purchasing power they lost the last 2 years when inflation was 6% and 5.8% in 2022 and 2023. So that's a big relief for our consumers. Hopefully, it persists beyond the elections, Cathy.
Well, there you are, you're circled in red, but 1.6% is still the slowest in nearly 5.5 years. But now that we're at 1.4%, that's well even before the COVID-19 pandemic arrived, or since November 2019, when inflation came in at 1.2%. So will you be revising your inflation estimate for May?
Yeah, for May, most likely, because the price of rice continued to decelerate, actually decline month on month in the first few days of May, and this should bring down headline even further. Just for some facts, Cathy, the 1.4 inflation that we saw today, if it hadn't been for rice, would have been 2.4% inflation. So a huge negative contribution from rice just for the month of April.
Yeah, but how sustainable is that, though?
Yeah, so it looks like again, for the first few days of May, we're seeing further drops in the average price of rice. So that means year over year, the contribution of rice will even be a bigger negative contribution, at least through September. By October, this will not be the case anymore. And that's probably why the BSP is slowing down on, they're not rushing to cut interest rates that much.
Let me pick up on the capacity of consumers to spend, as you mentioned earlier, the role that the extra spending had that goes along in an election year. In this case, the midterm election year. What did that have on April inflation? That's the final month before the midterm election next week.
Yeah, well, probably the impact of election spending is not going to be immediate, Cathy. There could still be a lag. And considering that oil prices and many other commodity prices continue to remain favorable, we don't see the inflationary impact of election spending outweighing these disinflationary pressures coming from other components. So I guess the BSP will really have the confidence to carry out its policy of easing, at least in the next few months.
Well, that also leads us to think about the policy priority of the Bangko Sentral, which we know they're inflation targeters. But right now that inflation is not a concern and growth is more of a concern, will that be their goal then, to shore growth in the next few months?
Yes, it seems the governor has confirmed this in his recent statements. In fact, shortly after their monetary board meeting, he hinted on more aggressive easing on the part of the BSP, although 25 basis points at a time, not 50. No big cuts in any of the meetings, Cathy. Yes, because exactly the headline is well below the 2 to 4% target. And the core is still within the 2 to 4%. I think today the figure was 2.2 for the month of April. And year to date, I think the average core inflation is 2.4. So they're well within the 2 to 4% inflation target. And again, I think they are going to watch Thursday's GDP report very closely and probably have an influence on their next meeting.
Well, we're watching yours, and it's on the other side of the screen, as you can see, the red circle there. You're pretty optimistic at 6.1%. There's been a lot of talk about GDP for the full year, not even making it to 6%. So how many more Bangko Sentral rate cuts, then, is that going to entail to get to 6.1%?
Yes, if there's an all clear on all the indicators that they're watching, and if the peso continues to strengthen, oil prices continue to fall, then there really is a lot of room for the BSP. Maybe we had to actually revise our rate cut outlook from 5.25% end of 2025 now down to just 5%, Cathy, because of such favorable indicators.
Before you go, let's take a quick check on the Philippine markets. The peso's been trading for over an hour, but the PSEI has just traded about 7 minutes ago, and I'm seeing it up by 1/10%. Taking a look at the currency, let's take a look at whether that's also opened higher. Looks like it's opened at 55.80, so it's weakened a little bit. What do you make of the initial market reaction following the inflation result?
Yeah, so if the lower than expected inflation increases the probability of a rate cut in June, and we saw a pretty strong jobs report in the US last Friday, a combination of the fact that the likelihood that the Fed will not cut this month and the BSP cutting in June means that our interest rates will be relatively less attractive than US rates, and this could be the reason why the peso is showing a very slight reversal in the last couple of trading days.
Got that. We're going to watch for GDP next, and that's going to come on Thursday. But tomorrow, the unemployment rate, of course. But thank you so much for joining us on this very important inflation day. June Nettie of BPI joining us live. You're watching Money Talks. We have news on tariffs coming right up. The 100% levy on films produced outside the U.S. soon. Well, this is government officials negotiate tariffs imposed on the Philippines. Keep it here on One News. Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang. U.S. President Donald Trump plans to impose a 100% tariff on movies produced outside the U.S., for they have become, in his words, a national security threat. Trump has authorized U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer to tax, quote unquote, any and all movies coming into our country that are produced in foreign lands. The White House clarified, though, that no final decision's been made, as it remains unclear which film is subjected to a levy. Hollywood has increasingly turned to other countries for some aspects of filming, since it is much cheaper. The Motion Picture Association of America, which represents Hollywood's biggest studio, declined to comment. Trump's order comes after he met this weekend with actor Jon Voight, whom he named special ambassador to Hollywood. Voight has shared plans on how to increase domestic film production, including federal tax incentives, changes to the tax code, co-production treaties with other nations, and infrastructure subsidies. Overall, Trump said he just wants to help a declining industry.
Our film industry has been decimated by other countries taking them out. And I'm actually going to meet with some because, you know, there's some advantages, I guess, and I'm not looking to hurt the industry. I want to help the industry. But they're given financing by other countries. And it's a big industry, but it's an industry now that's it's really left. It's abandoned the USA, where it started.
U.S. markets fell this Monday as Trump announced new tariffs on foreign-produced movies. The Dow snapping its 9-day winning streak, ending Monday's session lower by nearly 0.25%, its longest since December 2023. The S&P 500 also snapped its 9-day streak, sliding by 0.6%. Had the S&P streak risen for the 10th straight session, it would have been the index's longest since 1995. Meanwhile, the Nasdaq declined by nearly 0.75%. The benchmark 10-year Treasury yield settled to 4.34%, and gold prices notched up to $3,315 per troy ounce. U.S. markets point to slight losses when they open later tonight Manila time. The Dow falling by less than 0.1%, S&P declining by about the same, and the Nasdaq sliding by 0.33%. And Australia's ASX 200 is flat in the first hour of trading, opening at 8,157 from the previous close. And South Korea's Kospi is closed for Vesak Day. And Japan's Nikkei 225 is closed for Greenery Day. The government is optimistic it can reach a tariff deal with the U.S. as it continues negotiations. In a statement, Trade Secretary Cristina Roque said the talks went well and their points were well received. Roque, along with Special Assistant to the President for Investment and Economic Affairs Frederick Go and Philippine Ambassador to the U.S. Jose Manuel Romualdez, met with U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer in Washington on May 2. The goal is to restore tariffs to pre-Liberation Day levels after the U.S. imposed a 17% reciprocal tariff on Philippine goods. The 17% rate is currently paused for 90 days until July, but a 10% baseline remains. At a palace briefing, Go said the talks focused on semiconductors and electronics since these are the top Philippine exports to the U.S. He also said discussions centered on the coconut, garment, furniture, food, and automotive industries.
Napakahalaga po ng coconut industry sa atin dahil ito po ang #1 agricultural export natin sa Amerika. So, nabring up po namin to lahat ng mga concerns and issues ng mga stakeholders natin, and as I said earlier, I believe it was very well received.
Goss said more meetings are set, this time led by Trade Undersecretary Alan Gepti. He urged patience as talks move forward with the goal to finalize a framework before the tariff pause ends in July. With April inflation out, we hone in on a business that's driven chiefly by domestic consumer spending. SM Investments Corporation says it is expanding the footprint of its convenience store unit, Alphamart, this year, taking on the Philippines' industry leader, 7-Eleven. Alphamart had a total of 2,100 stores as of end 2024 and plans to expand further this year. Alphamart is a joint venture between the SM Group and Indonesia's Alphamart, a company with over 16,000 stores in Indonesia. With us now for more is Alphamart Trading Philippines Chief Operating Officer Harvey Ong. So good to see you, Harvey. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for the invitation, Cathy, and magandang umaga to all your viewers.
Magandang umaga. So you've heard from Junetti, inflation for April came in at 1.4%, even better than forecast. It is the slowest since November 2019. I don't know if you remember those days. You were still building
Oh,
your
yeah.
stores then. You were probably less than 2,000 then. What do you
That's
make of
right.
the result?
No, I mean, great news for Filipinos in general, and in particular to Alphamart shoppers. We cater more to the lower CDE segment of social demographic class, no? So this is a welcome relief for them. 2014 was not, 2024 wasn't a very good year for us. We did well in terms of the expansion. We opened 400 stores. We opened a new DC. And foot traffic continued to grow, but the basket size was quite constrained. For the first time in in many years, basket size did not grow, and this was mainly because of inflation, rice inflation in particular. So the news is very good, and we're seeing some improvements already this year, 2025. Compared to last year, we're starting to see modest growth on the basket size. So I'm looking forward to a good year for Alphamart this year.
That modest growth in the basket size, is that in any way impacted by the midterm elections? Because election years typically bring in a windfall for consumer-driven companies.
For us, if we compare it to the previous elections, actually election spending tend to benefit more the big box stores, not so much the small box. So we attribute it more, Kathy, to rice in particular. Although rice is around 10%, I guess, lower than where it was at the peak of 2024, it's still a bit higher than 2023 levels. But still, this reduction in the price of rice enables the shoppers to buy more in terms of their assortment.
I'm really curious, what are they buying? If there is a modest increase in the basket size, what are they checking out in your stores?
Ulam. So we're seeing very robust sales of our frozen goods, our chicken, our meat, seafood. They're all doing very well. So I attribute this solely to the slight reduction in price of rice.
Right, and it's frozen meats, isn't it? I mean, they'd rather go to that neighborhood store where they can get it
Right.
quick and then put in their fridge or maybe their freezers so it doesn't rot,
That's
given
right.
the high heat index. I wanted to ask you about the supply chain, though, and the impact that so far had between you and your international suppliers, since you've also got a partnership in Indonesia, since Trump's Liberation Day tariffs, the tariff pause that we have until July, and the 10% baseline tariff for mostly all,
Right.
including the
Well,
Philippines.
our supply chain is independent from our parent company in Indonesia, but we have been talking to our top 30 vendors in the last 2 weeks. So far, none of them have any position yet in terms of the impact tariff would have in terms of their supply chain to the Philippines. At any rate, Alphamart, we have anywhere from 45 to 50 days inventory in our stores, in our warehouses, plus our key suppliers have around 30, 45 days cover as well. So I think whatever happens, and really, Kathy, I don't know what's going to happen because things kind of change on a weekly, daily basis. But we're going to be covered in the next 3 to 4 months at the very least.
Well, on the group level, your parent knows what's going to happen. They're keen on overtaking Alphamart's biggest competition, 7-Eleven. So how are you coming along with the store openings and the collaborations to get that going?
Oh, well, I think to dispel the perception, I don't really see 7-Eleven as a competition, mainly because we kind of serve a different segment. 7-Eleven is usually found in the commercial areas. They serve the working professionals. We are really more catered to the subdivisions, to the residential areas. We are really less of a convenience store, but more of a compact supermarket, actually. So our assortment is broader, and you see a lot of things that you won't find in a convenience store, like frozen meats. And our prices tend to be closer to the supermarkets as well. That being said, our expansion is doing well, coming from a very high base last year, our 10th year anniversary. I think this year we should be opening close to 300 stores. But we will also take this opportunity as well with a lot of stores hitting the end of their lease. We're reviewing whether we're going to review some of these. We're going to renew some of these stores. As we have opened a lot of stores, some of them are already very close to the older stores. So we may take this opportunity to rationalize some of these stores, maybe looking at 20, 30 stores this year. So we expect to close at the very minimum 250 net new store openings for the year. That'll be 300 new stores minus at most 50 stores that will be rationalizing.
All right. Well, it helps to have a clear business strategy at a time of uncertainty. Thank you so much for joining us. Harvey Ong, the COO of
Thank you, Cathy.
Alphamart Trading Philippines. Pulse Asia releases its latest senatorial preference survey a week before Bilang Pilipino 2025. Senator Bongo continues to stay ahead of the pack with 62.2%, with Representative Erwin Tulfo, former Senate President Tito Soto, and Senator Bato de la Rosa at a distant second, third, and fourth. Senator Bong Revilla and former Senator Ping Lacson round up the top 6. Also in the probable winner's circle, Ben Tulfo, Makati Mayor Abby Binay, re-electionists Lito Lapid and Pia Cayetano, and Willie Revillame. Still within striking distance of the Magic 12, Representative Camille Villar and former Senators Manny Pacquiao and Bam Aquino. The survey was conducted from April 20 to 24 with 2,400 respondents. And coming up after the break, a conversation on supply chains with Chris Yip of S&P Global Ratings in Hong Kong. Stay tuned to Money Talks on One News. Welcome back to Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang. Farewell to Skype. The internet calling service owned by Microsoft rang for the last time yesterday, Monday. Microsoft announced in February that it would shut down Skype to focus on its homegrown Teams service. The software giant launched Skype in 2003 to enormous success throughout the decade, but it has struggled to keep up with the more reliable rivals such as Zoom and Slack. Further, it failed to be compatible with smartphones. Skype joins Internet Explorer and Windows Phone in a series of high-flying bets that Microsoft has mishandled. Moving on, a conversation on supply chains. Without ports, there can be no commercial shipments of the stuff we need and want. The latest round of U.S. tariffs has emerged as a significant hindrance alongside volume volatility, says S&P Global Ratings, in what it sees as Asian ports' stiffest test yet. With us now for more from Hong Kong is Chris Yip, the Managing Director of S&P Global Ratings. Good to see you, Chris. Welcome to the program.
Good to see you too, and thanks for having me.
All right, so with more than a month lapsed since Trump's Liberation Day tariffs, how are China's ports looking in terms of throughput with the triple-digit tariffs of goods wrapped around the goods shipped between the U.S. and China?
There is quite a lot of impact. Everyone is looking at the uncertainty. The tariffs are put on, but the shipping lanes are basically still adjusting to the fact that we have not a lot of certainty as to what might come. So some ships are still continuing. The routes have already been planned. Some are leaving with less goods. Some are canceling. So it will take time for a new equilibrium to be established. But the key is when the tariff policy is still in flux, that would be quite hard. So it really depends on as to how the negotiations between the China and the U.S. Tariff levels will eventually come out, and also what will happen to the 90-day pause for the tariffs for the rest of the countries.
Yeah, I can only imagine all the chaos, the realignments and rerouting happening in the various ports in Asia. What impact is the volume volatility having on the baseline 10% tariffs, though, so far in Asia's ports, including here in the Philippines?
Yeah, we believe that some adjustments in volumes are happening, but such levels compared to the ones being put on hold for the 90 days, and also compared to the levels being placed on most goods from China, this won't really be the key factor that affects port throughput. The key swing factor is really in the short term, barring any negotiations from China and the US, and what levels they might agree to have later on, is really the 90-day pause for the rest of the countries, because the trade flows are being redirected a lot of times to Southeast Asian countries like the Philippines and other ones. And it would be really important to see what would happen to that 90-day pause, because that would be a game changer to the flow that we are seeing a lot of boosts flowing through, and a lot of front-loading demand from China moving into Southeast Asia and then ultimately to the US. So that would be a key component as to what would happen afterwards.
What about the resiliency in terms of which ports are getting a lot more support from governments or maybe even the private sector, their parent companies? Which ports are looking most resilient in Asia?
I think for now, they're not expecting a lot of additional support. Most of the ports in Asia actually are quite diversified. So yes, the trade with the US is a big component, but that's not the only counterparty they deal with. There's a lot of intra-regional trade. There's also a lot of trade with other regions like Europe, Latin America, and so forth, which actually China and a lot of other countries are trying to promote since the first Trump administration a couple of years back. So the key to resilience is really how to adapt in this new environment, having the diversity in their routes, and how to control their costs, and also how much they're spending on CapEx. Right now, we put out a report recently, as you mentioned, that it would be a very big challenge for them. But the ports in general have quite a bit of financial buffer. They've been building that for quite a number of years, and they know they have the experience of going through COVID as well to adjust their operations and to adjust their operations and also their costs in a big disruption like the COVID pandemic. So this would be another test for them, but we believe most of them will have the ability to kind of get their way out.
That's good guidance and also silver linings there. Chris Yip, thank you so much for joining us of S&P Global Ratings in Hong Kong.
You're welcome.
And before we go, the Met Gala is back and the red carpet is in full swing over in New York City. Now, this year's theme, Super Fine, tailoring black style, celebrates the artistry of black fashion and the influence of the black dandy. And here's the headline. For the first time in over 2 decades, the Met Gala is dedicated solely to menswear. It's a night where elegance meets culture, and the stars have arrived. Among them is Diana Ross, who graced the Met Gala carpet for the first time in over 20 years. Zendaya turned heads in the all-white 3-piece ensemble. Blackpink's Lisa rocked the sheer and pantless trend, while Jennie stunned in a tuxedo gown. Meanwhile, A$AP Rocky made his appearance moments after her partner Rihanna revealed her pregnancy. That is it for Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang. Catch us again tomorrow, 9:30 a.m. here on One News. We're also streamed live on YouTube and on our Facebook channels. Have a great day ahead.